Hello everyone. My yesterday was spent watching snow all day, and in the evening shoveling it off, and it was quite a beautiful day. Like here are some photos I captured. It's kind of like there's a thick layer of snow, and the same in the driveway and everything. It's uh, it's quite pretty right now. I mean, of course, except the shoveling part, but that's part of it. That's part of what makes it so much fun. But we are here to talk about highlights, and let's start with that. So the first one is from Remote Not Distant. The truth is, people have a hard time expressing disagreement. Leaders should reframe the meaning of silence to confirm whether or not there is alignment. In The Advantage, Patrick Lencioni recommends changing the meaning of silence to no. Rather than assuming that people agree when they say stay silent, infer that they don't. Right, and this was quite insightful and um, well, I can't really find the word for it. This was something, we had a thing at work, uh, where we said that silence means acceptance. We encouraged people, we created that safe space, or tried to create the safe space. And then we encourage people to speak up whenever any decision involved them. And we are a fairly open organization. All the decisions are, like when it impacts anybody, they are involved in the decision, or they have an invitation to be involved in the decision. And as you can imagine, not many people choose to exercise that. And I mean, of course, then there was this thing that if you're staying silent, it just means that you're agreeing with what's going on, right? And that kind of bothered me all the time. um, we did make changes in the organization to look at it differently. And one of this highlight, for example, it kind of reasserts that to me that silence doesn't necessarily mean yes. And I mean, saying that is the easy way. If you want to get work done, yes, probably you may have to take a stance that okay, silence means yes. But what you're losing is the safety, the safety that we intended to create in the first place, the psychological safety. We're losing that. And yeah, I think this captures it. Then it changed the meaning of silence to say no. When there is silence, dig in. Uh, you know, uh, like this highlight says, leaders should reframe the meaning of silence to confirm whether or not there is alignment. It's not the end of conversation, it's the beginning of another one. We'll move on. The eye test. We build laboratories because the world doesn't behave like one. We might try to create our own private universes, but it's impossible to isolate our actions from one another and every other force that lies beyond our control. Strategy has only so much to do with outcomes. There are also those pesky matters of opportunity, privilege, and chance. Hmm. I can't recall the context. It's been a while since I picked this book up. But yeah, it kind of tells me about the control. We build controlled environments because the world isn't one. The world is organic, it is sporadic, it is random. So yeah, we try to create our own private universes, but it's impossible to isolate our actions from one another. So yeah, I think there's not much I can say without context, but otherwise this is fairly straightforward. We'll move on. The talent war. You can teach a candidate the needed hard skills, and you can give them the industry experience. You can't teach those raw ingredients of talent. As Don says, I look for three primary things when selecting someone. I look for raw intelligence because I can't make you smart. I look for energy because I can't give you energy. I look for positive mentality because I can't give you a positive outlook. I'm not sure I completely agree with this, or I'm completely aligned with this approach. It's a perspective, and it's useful for me to be reminded of different perspectives, just so that I don't get lost in my own world. So it is one of those highlights, which is kind of like a reminder to me that there are other perspectives out there, and there are other ways to approach a solution. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with it, on the surface level, on the superficial level, but it's the attitude and how you look for things. So yeah, it's kind of like a reminder for me. So I'll move on. Originals. Passionate people don't wear their passion on their sleeves. They wear it. They have it in their hearts. Okay, again, this is like one of the highlights without context, but again, it's like kind of like uh, this is sufficiently uh, as in it's straightforward, So let's move on. The leadership challenge. We're going to win if we help others win. We've got to give in order to get. If we can move the whole organization, what we are going to get is so much bigger than what we could have ever done on our own. Being humble and letting others shine comes back to you many times over. Again, I think it's one of the highlights that says everything. It doesn't really need a context as such, but yeah, it just goes to show that the manager's job is so much about giving, or uh, I mean, if you want to be, if you want to be good at that job, it is so much more about giving than consuming. And of course, the book goes a lot into like different aspects of what everything means. But yeah, I think like again, this is fairly straightforward on its own. So we'll move on. Stolen focus. Given that mind wandering has been shown to have so many positive effects, why does it so often make us feel bad? There is a reason for this. Mind wandering can easily descend into rumination. Most of us have had that feeling at some point or another. If you stop focusing and let your mind drift, you become jammed up with stressful thoughts. Okay. So the author is making a case that mind wandering is actually good, and like this is the conclusion that okay, why does it feel bad if it's so good? In another book that highlights have come up from, this A Mind for Numbers. They talk about this mind wandering. They kind of talk about mind wandering in by calling it the diffuse mode, as in when the brain is not really focusing on something, when you are not focusing on something intently, but you're just kind of lost in your thoughts. You're thinking about multiple things, and we talked about this yesterday in the highlight about the hard questions first. Like rather than picking up easy questions first in an exam, you pick the hard questions first, because then when you like after picking the hard question, when you switch to the easy question, like after time boxing your effort, your mind is in the diffuse mode, kind of like mind wandering mode this highlight is talking about. And that has a lot of benefits because it now the brain is able to make so many connections that otherwise it would not be able to. It needs that, I mean, if you're focusing on something too intently, you you're in that tunnel vision. You can't see anything else because you're focusing so intently on the problem. But when you step into the mind wandering phase, now you enter the creative phase, and your brain is able to make connections that you would never have thought before. And that's the benefit, like that's also the rationale behind what we discussed yesterday, the hard questions first thing. So why does it make us feel bad? Because this, if you don't really keep a track of it, it can lead into rumination, as this highlight suggests. So let's move on. The molecule of more. Winners cheat for the same reason that drug addicts take drugs. The rush feels great and withdrawal feels terrible. Both know that their behavior has the potential to destroy their lives, but the desire circuit doesn't care. It only wants more. More drugs, more success. Hmm. So this is all tight. The book is, of course, it's about dopamine. The molecule of more is referring to dopamine. So how dopamine plays a role into just going for more and more. It's like the desired circuit of dopamine. It only wants more. It doesn't care. It doesn't care about the long term consequences or anything. It's just the rush that you need to feel, to feel a win, because the dopamine circuit gets activated, in that case of reward prediction error. So same thing, winners cheat for the same reason that drug addicts take drugs. Drugs always keep increasing the baseline for dopamine. I mean, by giving you that kick, that dopamine shot, it kind of causes that. Uh, I'm forgetting exactly how it works. As in, like, does it activate the receptors or something else? I'm not really sure, but I don't remember. But yeah, it's drugs cause this kind of the desired circuits to kick in. Same way, winners, winning does the same thing. So let's move on. 4,000 weeks. When people stop believing in an afterlife, everything depends on making the most of this life. And when people start believing in progress, in the idea that history is headed towards an ever more perfect future, they feel far more acutely the pain of their own little lifespan, which condemns them to missing out on almost all of that future. And so they try to quell their anxieties by cramming their lives with experience. So this was very 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 insightful for me. It's kind of like, the explanations kind of fit together. It's kind of like that moment for me. So yeah, this idea of this life is the only thing that we have and it must be improved. That means there is no time to rest. There's only time for the next improvement and next improvement after that and the next improvement, constant improvement. There's no time to rest. That's where we are, right? And this kind of conveys that, there's no time for satisfaction. There's no time to feel the pleasure of here and now. You just have to go and get that next dopamine rush. Like I'm tying it, like, of course this book doesn't talk about dopamine rush. I'm tying in with the molecule of more, which we just read. So yeah, it's only the next dopamine rush that matters. The here and now circuits don't matter. It's the satisfaction doesn't matter. You're not focused on the present. It's always the improvement in the future, and there's no rest. And this highlight kind of tells me all of that. So yeah, move on. Let's move on. Traction. Your company needs to be organized in a way that reduces complexity and creates accountability. In addition, the structure should also be designed to boost you to the next level. So, Traction is a new book I've just started reading. I mean, I'll resume reading once I get my copy back. I had to return all my copies to the library before traveling. So, anyway, this highlight is I don't think there's much to say about here. This, it's fairly straightforward that it needs to be organized in the way that reduces complexity and creates accountability. There's one more thing that's related to this that comes up in the book is that your company cannot really go to the next level until you simplify your current operations, your current model, complexity model. Until that gets simplified, you can't really go to the next level. So I think that's more poignant to me than like this alone. But let's move on for now. Okay, this is a supplemental highlight. It's from Everyday Chaos, and giving up on this traditional self image of our species is wrenching and painful. Feeling crushed by information overload and nervously awaiting the next disruption of our business, government, or culture are just the localized pains of a deeper melody. The sense, sometimes expressed in uneasy jokes about the rise of robot overloads, that we are not as well adapted to our universe as we thought. So yeah, this book, although it's about machine learning, it's still highly philosophical in nature. It does not really go in depth about machine learning in programmatic sense, as in how it works, but conceptually how it works. Like what are the parts that needs that it needs for it to work correctly, and you know philosophically, what is machine learning all about? How does it match with um, not match, how does it correspond with our regular understanding of the world and everything? Why it is not as foreign as we might think of it to be. And so there are like a lot of snippets like this in the book all over. And uh, I think there's like very little I can talk about it without going too deep into the whole book, which of course takes a long time. So if you're interested in things like this, it's a good book to read. I really enjoyed this one. And that's it, the end of it. This is just the bonus highlight. I'm going to skip it today. I think we are at quite decent you know at significant time. So that's the end of the highlights video today. I hope you had fun and have a good day.